Hey guys, this is William again with another episode of the Terra Academy, still in our Python SDK for Terra contract series. Today we're going to go into a little bit more controversial topic regarding scams and how you can do what you can do to prevent and why you should not ever trade random tokens on Terraswap that you might see. Because even though Terraswap is a mature product, some of the tokens that might exist on Terraswap do not necessarily have to obey certain rules. So we highly recommend that if you find a random tokens on Terraswap, that you do not trade them. Not that you might get rug pulled, but you might be executing malicious code that you might not expect because you just think it's just a way to transfer tokens in and out. But actually, Terraswap is able to call arbitrary code on other contracts that you might not expect. And just because something exhibits the interface of a CW20 token does not mean that it necessarily acts like its CW token should behave. So let's dive into let's go directly into the whiteboard where I'm going to show you how Terraswap works and what we can do to exploit it. All right, so just move over a little bit. Okay, so the first thing we have to look at is the two contracts that we're going to be interested in, which are the factory and the pair. So the factory, obviously by its name you can tell it creates new pairs, and a pair is something that represents a pool or an AMM. So anything that has a pool of two assets on Terraswap, that is called a pair. And a pair could be like a native asset, like UST. So you can have a native and a native pair. You can have a native token and a token, like UST and mirror. Or you can have a token and a token, like mirror and anchor. So those are things that are possibly represented with a pair. So when you're trading on Terraswap, what you're really doing is interacting with the pair contracts for that trading pair that you're interested in. For example, if you want to buy some mirror on the mirror UST pool on Terraswap, what you're actually doing is trading against the MIR UST pair. So let's go into how we're going to list our asset on Terraswap. So number one, we're going to create our asset. This should obey the CW20 interface. And then we're going to invoke factory.createPair on the factory contract. So the factory, there's only one factory for the Terraswap ecosystem, and that kind of just registers new pairs for the assets that you want to do. What we're going to do is we're going to create a Luna pair with our malicious asset and just demonstrate like how we can steal other people's Luna using our malicious asset. So let's go over to Terraswap's swap mechanism and why and how you might be able to exploit it. So the thing is that Terraswap pairs expect a properly behaving CW20. So we can create something that looks like a CW20, but doesn't really act like CW20 in how it properly should act. So actually, this CW20 can execute arbitrary logic that other users do not expect. So we're going to take advantage of some asymmetry here. So when providing liquidity, the users that provides the liquidity increases the pair's allowance, and then the pair draws from the user's balance using the CW20 transfer from method. Whereas when another user tries to buy from the pair, tries to swap, the pair sends from its balance directly using the CW20 transfer method. So this means that we can actually just change some logic in the transfer method and kind of introduce some malicious activity while not affecting any other outwardly appearances about the token. So if the users find the token on Terraswap and they just manage to trade against it, they will feel the effects because we're going to have the malicious code being the CW20 transfer method. So let's go over to VS Code where I'm going to show you how exactly this is implemented. All right. So, okay, there we go. All right, so let's start by looking into the CW20, the Terraswap pairs provide liquidity method. So as you can see, what it does is it, just makes sure it gets the tokens that it needs from the liquidity provision, and then sends creates some LP tokens. So here, this is how it gives itself things from its allowance using the transfer from method. Whereas if we go into try swap, we see that it does not use transfer from, but directly it uses, let's see, percent native balance. Okay. It uses into message, which is actually transfer, right? So we know that there is some asymmetry, and we can take advantage of it so that it looks like an unsuspecting user might see just the CW20, look like just a normal token on Terraswap. So, okay, so what I have here, this is just a continuation of our previous lessons. Using the same repository, but I've included something here called Evil Terraswap, which gives me a just blank CW20 token, which is a vanilla CW20 token that is expected by Terraswap. So if I compile this and run this, nothing evil will go on. So I'm going to go into the handle transfer. Well, I think I messed up. It's all the way up here. Handle transfer. Okay. Handle transfer. There we go. Okay. So as you can see, we just get the recipient and we get the sender, and we make sure that the sender has enough in their balance. And then what we do is we subtract that that amount from the sender, the amount being sent, and then we transfer that amount to the recipient by updating their balances, right? So here we subtract from the sender and we update the recipient's final balance, so that that kind of completes the transfer. But what I'm going to do here is, instead of giving the recipient the full amount, I'm just going to give the recipient just 1. So whereas the recipient would expect to receive the full amount, they're only just going to get 1. So let's go over to let's build this. Let's just build this. Just build. Okay. Okay, now it's built, and it should be in artifacts. And I'm going to put it in my contract scripts artifacts. Okay, let me walk over a script I wrote called Terraswap scam.py. This is basically very similar to the scripts that we wrote before. We have a store contract, we have an instantiate contract, and we have an execute contract, which allows us to execute. Except this time I've added the coins, because when you're providing liquidity, you also have to add some coins. So I'm just going to walk through the code. The first part is I'm just going to store all the codes, upload all the codes, and then I'm going to create a Terraswap factory. And the Terraswap factory just takes 2 things. It takes a token code ID and it takes a pair code ID, which it uses to create new pairs. So the token code ID here is actually not used for anything like verification, though it might, it should, I think, but it doesn't. So we're kind of taking advantage of the fact that it doesn't check that the token code ID or the asset uses that token code ID for its contract. And the reason why it has a token code ID here is to, when it's creating a new LP token for a new pair, it uses this token code ID for creating that new LP token pair. LP token. Okay, so now we have that. I'm going to create 2 tokens that are identical in the amount they have. So here I'm using 1 billion units, which is equivalent to 1,000, because our decimals are 6. So I've created normal token and I've created evil token. So I'm going to create the norm Luna pair now using the factory.create pair, and I'm using, so I'm using, I'm just creating a norm Luna pair, and this should print out the normal pair contract. And now I'm creating an evil Luna pair. So as you can see, the execute messages are pretty equivalent, and everything. This means that everything else considered equal, they should behave similar. But we know that they are different contracts, so we know that we're going to have some malicious behavior in one and normal expected behavior in the other. So now I'm going to be providing liquidity to the normal pair. So increasing the allowance, right? And then providing liquidity, and then also depositing Luna. So then I'm putting like 1 billion normal tokens and 1 Luna, and 1 billion evil tokens and 1 Luna. All right, so now we should see that the normal pair's balance of norm and the evil pair's balance of evil should be the same, because I've used the same execute messages in everything except for the pair contracts and the evil token. And now I'm just going to swap. So I'm going to act as a different user now, a trader, account 2, and they're going to just try to get some tokens by putting in Luna. So they're going to buy 1 Luna, and they're going to see how much they get of each token. And if we run this, we can see that they swapped Luna for how much? Norm tokens, and how much for evil tokens. So if we've done this correctly, this Terraswap, this unsuspecting Terraswap trader should be very pissed. So what I'm going to do is go into local Terra first and set up my environment. Docker compose up. First tear down my previous environment that I was using while developing. Now let's set up local Terra. Compose up. Okay, while that's getting set up, we just need to go into our contract scripts, and we can just run Terraswap scam. Okay, as you can see, before we trade, the balances are equal. And now after we trade, we see that the trader swapped 1 Luna for this many norm tokens, and we saw that the trader swapped 1 Luna for just 1 evil token. So, so as you can see, by just changing the code of the token, you can put some malicious code in that an unsuspecting Terraswap user might fall victim to. And it's very hard to check whether or not it's a valid token right now, because there's not a code validation system that you can see, like this code corresponds to this source code. So I reiterate, please do not trade random tokens on Terraswap unless they have been vetted by the community. I've only shown you a little glimpse of what is possible here, but you can imagine how some, more twisted user might, create something like a decentralized application that doubles as a CW20, and then kind of uses this unsuspecting logic, or unsuspecting, an unsuspecting user might just go into Terraswap and interact with their token, and might drain not only from their balance, but from from other applications that are using it. So please do not trade random tokens on Terraswap until the code verification systems are out. Thank you.